Joining me now, as he does each and every week, is Sky News Australia's media watchdog columnist, Gerard Henderson. Gerard, thanks for joining us on the desk.
Pleasure.
Well, let's get straight into it because I think we've got a little bit of a conspiracy theory which has been given light on the ABC. Let's take a close listen.
He had kept extracts from some of the letters, so I'd actually seen some of these extracts. And from all of these things, I was able to sort of build a picture of what he was discussing with the Queen. And I was absolutely astonished because it was clear that matters that went to the heart of the dismissal were raised with the palace from as early as September 1975. And so these letters, we'd always been told that was not the case. And in fact, Buckingham Palace had put out a statement, which now reads quite outrageously, saying that neither the Queen nor any member of the royal household had any part to play in the decision that Kerr made. And that is absolutely not the case.
Well, Gerard, what's happening there?
Well, the comment wasn't challenged by Sally Sarah. I mean, it absolutely is the case. Now, both Troy Bramson and Paul Kelly are antagonistic to Sir John Kerr. They're hostile to him. Paul has been for 50 years. But they looked at these letters and they said there was no relationship between Kerr and the palace. Now, Kerr, I knew Kerr and I spoke to Kerr about these matters, but Kerr had to advise the palace. He took his role very seriously. But his whole intention was to keep the palace out of the controversy because he didn't want the Queen and her advisors, who he mainly dealt with her advisors, not with the Queen, as Jenny Hocking suggested. He wanted to keep them out of an Australian dispute. And people like Paul Kelly and Troy Bramson have gone through all the documents, say there's no indication at all that Kerr was influenced by the palace, and likewise the other conspiracy theory about the CIA. But the problem here is that Sally Sarah didn't challenge it. So in the half hour leading up between, on that day, on the 11th of November, leading up to the 9 o'clock news, you had on Nikki Sava, who was hostile to Kerr. You had on Troy Bramson, who was hostile to Kerr. You had Red Kerry O'Brien come out of retirement and came up with some sort of concern about Australian democracy. You had Kerry O'Brien worked for Whitlam. You had David Solomon in retirement, but he was Whitlam's media advisor. And then you had Jenny Hocking. So you had 5-zip. No one was allowed to put a different view. And that's the problem with the ABC. There's no viewpoint diversity, as we know. But this was particularly egregious because it's quite damaging both to Australian society and to the palace to think that somehow the Queen was involved. But we all know about the Queen, the late Queen and the King. I mean, they don't want to get involved in domestic matters outside their own country, and they shouldn't be involved in them inside their own country either.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about David Littleproud and a little bit of a fact check that the ABC gave him.
Finally.
All right, well, David Littleproud, there's a whole series of statements there that really should require fact checks on the run. I can't do all of them.
Well, Sarah Ferguson,
she's a disgrace, isn't she? Honestly,
she set herself up as a fact checker. So anyone she disagrees with, they need to get their facts checked, but not her. And in the program, as we'll come to in a minute, I mean, the most egregious error was made by Jacob Grieber, and it was made on Sarah Ferguson's watch about the whole issue. They made a big mistake, and I think you're going to have a clip on that.
Matt Keane, we'll need to leave it there. Thank you for your time from Brazil this morning.
Thank you very much, Sally.
Matt Keane is the chair of the Climate Change Authority and former New South Wales Liberal Treasurer.
Well, what happened is after the earlier part, the Page Research Centre, which works with the Nationals, objected to the way their report was covered in the interview with David Littleproud.
Well, she said it was coal money.
Yeah, she said it was coal money, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And they actually, are very rare that the ABC accepts complaints. So the ABC accepted the complaint, put up a correction, not on the television, but put up a correction on its correction page, which said this, that Keane provided his opinion on politics, and that's the next issue. He said he is the chairman of the Climate Change Authority, which is true, but they didn't say that. And he's also a director and a head of fundraising at Wollemi Capital, a clear energy investor. Now, the ABC's never said that before. And indeed, he was interviewed on recently again on the ABC, and they didn't say it again. But there's now a direction from the ABC that if... Now, the point about Matt Keane, of course, is that ABC types love quoting Liberals who are attacking the Liberal Party. So Matt Keane's the former Liberal Party Treasurer in New South Wales. So, but what the ABC finally decided was that it should be mentioned that he's chairman of the Climate Change Authority appointed by the Albanese government, and he is a fundraiser and a director at Whitlam Capital, a clean energy investor. I've never said it before. He's been on all their programs.
Which is extraordinary. He has a direct interest in the renewables industry doing well at the same time that he is advising on efforts to increase renewable take-up. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
And the Climate Change Authority is a part-time job, and the Whitlam Capital is a full-time job. I mean, a chair is always a part-time job, although a lot of people don't understand that. So eventually you got this correction up, but I noticed again last night that, or yesterday morning, that Sally Sarah was talking to Matt Keane again, and she didn't mention this. So 7:30's mentioned it, but ABC Radio National Breakfast hasn't mentioned it yet. We'll see.
We'll see. OK, moving on. Nick Bryant forgets Tony Blair's rethink on climate. We've got a grab here to listen to.
Nick Rowley, it has been great to talk to you. You're a former climate advisor to the former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, and you are now the chair of the New South Wales Net Zero Commission. Thanks for joining us on Saturday Extra.
Well, that was the first mention that was made to Tony Blair in the discussion with Nick Rowley, and who's chair of the New South Wales Zero Energy Commission. But what wasn't, if you're going to mention that Nick Rowley had worked for Tony Blair, you might mention what Tony Blair's current position is, which is that Tony Blair has said that that zero emissions is not going to work. He's made it very clear. It's in a document of his. He wrote a foreword to a document of the Tony Blair Institute where he said that. So Nick Bryant sort of says to Nick Rowley, well done, and he used to work for Tony Blair. But, I mean, the hidden truth is that Tony Blair doesn't hold the view that Nick Rowley holds. Quite the contrary. He's now saying there are very serious problems with the transition and we're going to have to reassess it because it's essentially not going to happen. Now, that's been quoted by the BBC. It's on the Tony Blair Institute website. Anyone can find it. Nick Bryant should have known it. Nick Rowley should have said it, that Tony Blair's changed his position. So you can't invoke Tony Blair for Nick Rowley's position
without mentioning the fact that, that he's changed his mind.
And it's good that he's changed. I mean, Tony Blair's looked at the facts and he's changed his mind.
Gerard Henderson, thank you so much for your insights. Pleasure. As always,